In 1961, at this home in Tempe, lived married couple Aubrey and Frances Graves. Aubrey was 34 years old and his wife Frances was 40. On Saturday, January 7th, around 9:30 in the evening, Aubrey and Frances had guests over, a couple friends. They were all in the living room of the house watching television. Aubrey and Frances had been drinking. Aubrey got up at one point and left the room. He then returned. As he returned, he was stumbling, but he had a gun in his hand. And as he was coming into the living room from the kitchen, the gun went off. The bullet hit Frances in the chest. She would die on her way to the hospital. Aubrey Graves was arrested, and he was released on bail. He was charged with second-degree murder. Later that year, he was convicted of involuntary manslaughter, and in late December, he was sentenced to 5 years probation. He died in 2005 at the age of 78. He's buried at Rest Haven Park East Cemetery in Glendale. Frances M. Graves was 40 at the time of her death. According to her death certificate, she's buried at St. Francis Catholic Cemetery in Phoenix. At this spot on 7th Avenue, downtown Phoenix, in 1962, there was a bar called the Green Goose Tavern. On Wednesday night, May 24th of that year, a 32-year-old ex-con named Warren Sherrick entered the tavern and pulled a gun on the tavern operator, 55-year-old Lewis Taylor. After forcing Taylor to open the register and give him the money, he led Taylor to a room at the rear of the bar, where he forced him to lie face down. Sherrick pointed the gun at the back of Taylor's head and fired twice. He then searched Taylor and found his wallet, pocketing the $300 that Taylor had on him, and he also took his wallet with him. Sherrick left the bar into the night. After being tipped off by a waitress who saw their photo and a tip from Sherrick's former landlady, Sherrick and an accomplice were arrested at the Blue Grotto Bar and Restaurant. Police searched the apartment he shared with another ex-con named Carl Reed and found the gun that was used in the murder. Sherrick admitted to the crime, saying he acted alone and that he killed Taylor because he was a witness. During the search at the apartment, police found stolen items from various robberies that Sherrick and Reed had done together. They had also found a purse with an Ohio identification of a woman named Rosalie Kreider. When police contacted authorities in Ohio, they discovered that Rosalie Kreider had been murdered that previous April. Like Taylor, Rosalie also had been shot twice in the back of the head, and police were able to match the gun to both crimes. When confronted with the evidence, Warren Sherrick also admitted to the murder of Rosalie Kreider. In Arizona, Warren Sherrick was charged with first-degree murder in the death of Lewis Taylor. He was found guilty and sentenced to death. He was scheduled to die in the gas chamber 2 times, coming as close as 3 days to his execution, but a stay of execution both times prevented it. He was on death row for 8 years until his sentence was reduced to life in prison in 1970. He remained in prison until his death at the age of 69 in the year 2000. Lewis Albert Taylor was born in Missouri, and he was 56 years old and had been running the bar for about 5 months at the time of his death. His wife was named Mabel, and the two of them had operated a catering service from their home for 15 years in Phoenix. He is buried at Greenwood Memory Lawn Cemetery in Phoenix. Rosalie Kreider worked as a waitress at the Alpine Village restaurant in Lima, Ohio, on the evening before her death. Her shift ended at about 9:30, and she remained at the restaurant drinking coffee and talking with fellow workers. She remained there until around 11:30 and was last seen by another employee leaving the restaurant. She told others earlier that night that before heading home, she was going to go to the laundromat called the Econo Wash to do her laundry. Her husband expected her to be home around 3:30 in the morning, but she never returned home. Her car was found abandoned in the backyard of this home. Inside, a used .38 caliber slug and Rosalie's blood-soaked glasses were on the front seat. In the trunk of the car were 2 baskets of laundry, washed, dried, and neatly folded. Her body was found on the side of the road the next day, Wednesday morning. She was still alive, but died at 9:15 that evening. Evidence showed, despite being shot twice in the back of the head, she attempted to crawl toward the road from the embankment where she was found. At the time he was arrested and admitted to the death of Rosalie Kreider, Warren Sherrick said that he had been seeing her for a month and had been on a few dates with her. Now, she was married at the time, and on the night before her death, Sherrick and Rosalie met up for a cup of coffee at the Alpine Village. They planned to meet a few hours later at the Econo Wash. When they did meet up, he said he wanted her to leave her family and come with him to Arizona. She told him that she wouldn't leave her family, so he killed her. Or not, this is true, will never be known. Rosalie C. Heron Kreider was survived by her husband Clarence, 2 sons, her mother, 2 brothers, and a sister. She is buried at Wright Cemetery in Venedocia, Ohio. At this home in downtown Phoenix on July 27, 1965, police arrived after receiving a call about a shooting. When they got there, they found a 51-year-old woman named Opal Lee McKee dead in the living room. She had a gunshot wound to her chest. Opal's husband, 52-year-old Woodrow Wilson McKee, had called police and gave conflicting stories about what happened. First, he told them that he shot his wife to prevent her from shooting someone else. Then he said that she shot herself, and then woke him up and said to him, "I shot myself and I'm taking you with me." And at that point, he said that he had wrestled the gun away from her and she fell to the ground dead. And then that she shot herself when he tried to take away a rifle with which she was going to commit suicide. Woodrow was arrested and charged with murder. He was released that night on $10,000 bond. Now, the death certificate read that Opal's death was the result of a gunshot wound inflicted by person or persons unknown. A witness told a detective that he heard a woman scream, "No, no, no," and then he saw Opal stagger to the front door of the home, covered in blood, but was then pulled back inside by Woodrow. Investigators said she suffered gunshot wounds to her face, her chest, and her right hand. Statements made by Woodrow to police that night were ruled inadmissible by Maricopa County Superior Court Judge Val Cordova because he had not been fully advised of his rights to a court-appointed attorney. This includes other statements he made the night that police came into the home when he said, "Here she is. She tried to shoot me and I killed her. I didn't shoot her. She shot herself. I was trying to take the gun away from her." One of the detectives on the case said that he discovered that the bullets that were used in Opal's death were the same bullets that were purchased earlier that day, and that 9 live rounds were found in Woodrow's pocket that night. During the trial, 2 witnesses testified that Woodrow threatened to kill Opal. Elva Bridges, a friend of Opal, said that she once overheard Woodrow tell Opal, "I think I'll kill you. I'll knock your head through a wall." Alfred Koch, the owner of a bar on Van Buren, said Woodrow told him in February of that year that Opal was in the hospital, but he didn't want to visit her. "I'm going to kill the," Koch said Woodrow told him. Woodrow had been charged with first-degree murder, and he had pled innocent. He himself actually testified that Opal woke him up in the middle of the night and said, "I shot myself, and I'm taking you with me," and that he wrestled the gun from her, and as he did this, she fell to the ground and she was dead. He was found guilty not of first-degree murder, but of manslaughter, and he was sentenced to 5 to 6 years in prison. He died in 1990 at the age of 76. He's buried at Davis Cemetery in Athens, Texas. Opal Lee Pennington McKee was 51 at the time of her death. She worked as an operator for the Mountain States Telephone Company for 9 years. She was survived by 2 daughters and a son. According to her death certificate, she is buried at Greenwood Memory Lawn Cemetery in Phoenix. At this home in Scottsdale in 1981 lived 75-year-old John Bunchik and his wife, 74-year-old Sylvia. This was an exciting time for them because on June 21st, they would be celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. On the morning of March 12, 1981, John went to the store to place an order for liquor for the celebration. When he got back, Sylvia told him about a man who came to the door while he was away. She told John that not long after he left, the doorbell rang. When she answered it, there was a man who asked her if she knew if anyone was home at the house next door. She said she didn't think the neighbors were there, and the man said something along the lines of, "When they get home, will you tell them that Robert Smith had come over?" And then he left. Sylvia told John to go check out the home because she thought that something was wrong, and he agreed. John left the home and walked next door. As he approached the front door, he saw that it was kicked in. He entered the home anyway. Sylvia grew concerned when John didn't return after a few minutes. She left her home and began walking next door, and as she did, she saw the man who had come to the door, identifying himself as Robert Smith, walking down the street away from the home. She started to call John's name as she got closer to the home. And when she entered the home, there was no answer. She continued to call his name, but when she got to the den, she found John lying face down in front of the television. He had been shot in the chest. John Bunchik died on the way to the hospital. Police did a house-to-house search for blocks, looking for the suspect, but were unsuccessful. Sylvia told police how she told John to go next door. Through tears, she described the suspect the best she could. She said she told him to check on the house because she thought that something was wrong. 3 months later, FBI agents arrested a man in New York named Ronald Turney Williams. There had been a shootout and Williams was wounded, but he was taken into custody. Williams was a West Virginia prison escapee who was convicted of murder after killing a Beckley, West Virginia police sergeant David Lilly in 1975. But in 1979, he escaped with 14 other inmates. During the escape, he was accused of shooting and killing West Virginia State Trooper Philip Kesner. The gun Williams used in the shootout with FBI agents was the same gun used to kill John Bunchik. Ronald Turney Williams was brought to trial in Arizona where he received the death penalty for the murder of John Bunchik. At the time of the murder, Williams was living in Arizona using an alias, and he had 2 roommates. After the murder, they never saw Williams again as he fled town without saying a word the same day. The morning of the murder, he had gone to various homes, and he was seen by neighbors. Some even had talked to him, like Sylvia Bunchik. In the end, he received the death sentence in Arizona, but he was sent back to West Virginia to serve out his life sentences. At the time of this video, he is still alive at age 81. The burial site for John Vincent Bunchik is unknown. Heartbroken over the loss of her husband, Sylvia A. Bunchik died a year later on March 9, 1982, at the age of 75. A mass for her was said at St. Maria Goretti Catholic Church in Scottsdale. She was survived by her 2 daughters, a sister, 5 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchild. Her burial site is also unknown. On Monday, May 30th, 1983, Memorial Day, Ed Bundy arrived home after working a shift as a bartender. In the bedroom, he found the dead body of his wife, 27-year-old Kathy Bundy. She was on the bed, nude, her hands bound by a necktie, and another tie was wrapped around her throat. Police arrived, and Ed was quickly ruled out as a suspect. An investigation determined Kathy had been raped and manually strangled. Her wedding ring and a diamond engagement ring were also missing. This wasn't random, and police checked into the personal lives of Kathy and Ed. On May 31st, police arrested a man named Robert Philip Charo, 32 years old. He was picked up at his home. Kathy Bundy was a native of Austin, Minnesota. She worked as a cocktail waitress at the Backstage restaurant in Scottsdale and sometimes in Tempe. Robert Charo also worked at the Backstage restaurant as a manager. Charo became obsessed with Kathy Bundy, and he forced himself on her in July of 1981, but somehow she was able to escape. Since that time, she was scared of Charo. He began to stalk her, driving by their home, taking pictures of her. He told a friend he was going to get her and planned to sexually assault her. Charo was fired from his job at the Backstage restaurant. Just 3 days later, Kathy was murdered. At the crime scene, Charo's thumbprint was found on an open jar of Vaseline in the bathroom, and some was found on Kathy's arm, with hairs identical to Charo's. Now, Robert Charo was charged with first-degree murder, and the prosecutor painted a picture of a man angered for 2 years over her marriage to his best friend. He raped and strangled her, then removed her wedding ring, because she had come between himself and his best friend, Ed Bundy. Police found a photo album filled with pictures of Kathy Bundy in a locker that Charo had rented. His attorney said that he and Kathy were like brother and sister. Charo told the jury that he didn't kill her, but he did admit that he began badgering her about a year before her death. He said he did this because the Bundys owed him several $100s. He said he flattened one of her tires because of the debt, and said that that was the worst thing that he had ever done to the Bundys. Regarding the photo album of Kathy, Robert claimed that he made albums for many friends. And as far as the Vaseline, he said he stopped by the home on May 27th and used some while he was visiting her. In February 1984, Robert Charo was found guilty of first-degree murder, robbery, and sexual assault. In April, he was sentenced to death. Maricopa County Superior Court Judge Dorothy Carson said Charo became obsessed with Kathy and had a love-hate relationship with her, punctuated by continued harassment, stalking, and finally death. Charo was sentenced to 8 years for the robbery and 21 years for the sexual assault. Court records also showed Charo also pled guilty to stealing $52,287 in savings from his mother and brother, and was given probation for that. Charo's sentence eventually, like many others, changed to life in prison. He remained in prison until his death in 2012 at the age of 61. In a strange twist, in 1981, 2 years before the murder, Robert Charo's name and picture appeared in the newspaper. This was because he was the Arizona Lottery's first winner, winning $10,000. His photo would appear occasionally in the newspaper, along with other winners, promoting the Arizona Lottery. Kathy Jean Soini Bundy was 27 at the time of her death. She graduated from Austin High School in 1974 and moved to Tempe in 1975. According to her obituary, she'll always be remembered for her friendly personality and always a smile on her face. She was survived by her husband Ed, her parents, brothers and sisters-in-law, grandparents, aunts, uncles, a nephew, niece, and cousins. She is buried at Woodbury Cemetery in Lisle, Minnesota. Here in this industrial part of Phoenix back in the 70s and 80s, this was a business called Wash World, which was a truck wash and fuel stop. Semis and tractor trailers were in and out of this place all the time. On the morning of Monday, November 9th, 1981, one of the drivers who had been at the Wash World started the engine of his Freightliner truck, which was pulling a double-wide trailer. The driver slowly turned the rig and began to maneuver in the direction of the exit. He drove the rig out of Wash World, heading onto McDowell Road, and drove away, unknowingly leaving behind a gruesome scene. The driver was unaware that a man had been sleeping under his rig and was completely run over and instantly killed when he left Wash World. Police were called to the scene and they began looking for the Freightliner truck. Police said the driver probably did not know that he was involved in an accident and that there was no indication it was intentional. They didn't expect any charges would be brought against him. Whether they found the truck or the driver is unknown. The victim was thought to be a transient who had just been looking for a place to sleep. He was identified as a 21-year-old man named Dan Chandler of Pocatello, Idaho. Nothing is really known about him, but this video is dedicated to him. Dan Thomas Chandler is buried at Riverside Thomas Cemetery in Blackfoot, Idaho.